Hello, I'm David and I'm gonna be talking about the book of Aaru. Welcome back and thank you for joining me for this video. Today, I would love to introduce you to our beloved combat system. This one might be a bit more technical, so buckle up and prepare for the ride. Combat in our game is very simple, and yet it can get complicated. And I mean that both in terms of design and gameplay. You see, all the attacks in our game are controlled by only two buttons. These two buttons on your mouse. But it's not about the count of them, but about how you combine them. For the purpose of our roguelike game, focused largely on players who like to take on the challenging scenarios, we wanted to come up with something special. Something which will really underline the skill of the player while still being accessible to everyone. Most usually, when a game offers you more than one of attack types, let's say fast, heavy and thirst, the plot of such combat system is that every attack has its different purpose and it's up to the player to learn when is the suitable moment to use it. With systems like this, it very often goes hand in hand that when you use the same attack type more than once in a row, you start to build up a combo. Each consecutive attack in such a combo usually tends to be more powerful, often leading to a finishing attack which can behave slightly differently to the previous ones. This combat system can be seen in most close range focused games, from Witcher to Dark Souls. There are many benefits to it. First of all, it's very easy to learn, but quite hard to master. All the player needs to know are the inputs. But to develop the feeling of when to use the right attacks can take some training. That means these systems can enable many combat scenarios, gradually growing from the easy ones to more difficult ones. In systems like these, power attacks like heavy, for example, are often stronger, but the price you need to pay is time spent preparing them and also the time resting afterwards. This is called anticipation, action and recovery. Altogether, these steps can take only 1 second in length, but in combat, every tenth of a second counts. What is a downside of this combat system is the fact that everything is in the end controlled by time. In the end, everything ends up as a question of action economy, where the only focus is, can I squeeze in the stronger attack before an enemy can perform his own attack? Then, there's quite an opposite combat system to one just described, which can be seen in games like Monster Hunter, Devil May Cry, or very loosely, Mortal Kombat. These games are literally focused almost solely on the fights. That means it gets very complex because its audience expects it. This combat system relies on advanced input combinations in specific order. What is the great benefit of such a system is that it can get very creative, rich in actions, and it doesn't necessarily forces the combat into soul trading of anticipations. With unlimited input combinations, you can reach unlimited outcomes, meaning the player can have access to dozens of attacks, each with different purposes, all at the same time. Disadvantage, on the other hand, is that it demands on the player learning specific, to some extent hard to understand action combinations. This results in sort of gatekeeping these games only to a limited audience. So, while both of these mechanisms have some clear cons and pros, we did not want it to go with neither of those. We wanted to keep our doors open to all sorts of players while still having the access to numerous action outcomes, still relying on the accustomed action economy, but not be tightened by the time management of the attacks. That's why we created our own combat system, combining both just described. So let me introduce you to it and explain how exactly does it work. We kept the classic division into light and heavy attacks, but we put a lot of more importance on attack streaks, mainly their finishing moves. We call these streaks and finishing moves combos and finishers. With each weapon player can equip, our game allows 4 different attack types, 4 different combos and 8 unique attacks. Without going necessarily deep into elaborate mechanisms, let me just explain very fast on this screenboard. There are variations of melee and ranged attacks for both light and heavy attacks. And light combos are performed by 3 consecutive attacks of the same type, while heavy combos are achieved by combining range attacks with melee ones. And lastly, each combo results in a different and more powerful attack, finisher. This system allows us not only to focus on time costs of each attack, but also their unique purpose and utility. While light combos are easy to execute and are very strong in purely range or melee situations, to perform a heavy combo you have to put in more effort, but the output is very worth it. With heavy combos, you can very easily outplay your opponent by combining range and melee actions, often with stun abilities or positional advantage. We also focus on balancing all the combos evenly. It may seem that spamming range attacks is the most effective strategy, but once you learn to use heavy combos effectively, you start to understand its benefits. Light attacks give you a certain feeling of safety due to their fast anticipation, resulting in a big mobility, but heavy attacks strongly outperform them in damage and crowd control, resulting in fact a more reliable and safer tactic. You, as the player, have the freedom to choose any playstyle suits you the most, but a responsibility is also placed upon you. Responsibility to learn when it's advantageous to use the whole combo and reach for the finisher, to learn when to simply switch from light melee attack to light ranged attack, or when to start with ranged heavy and finish with melee heavy, performing heavy combo. But so far we have been focusing only on the attacks and their types. But what about the defense? Well, defense plays a huge role in every combat, and usually you either want to defend yourself by escaping the incoming impact or by denying it, or in other words, by dodging or parrying. And while we made some small adjustments to these evergreen mechanics according to our needs, we mostly kept them as they are used in all the other games, because they just work so great. While dodging or rolling away is often safer, because not only do you get missed by the enemy attack, you also gain positional advantage, parrying can reflect the impact back on the attacker and stun him. Also, parry is much more reliable means of defense, while you can use it absolutely anytime. Roll, on the other hand, shares the stamina pool with all the attacks. That leads to another great element of the combat, stamina economy. You have to decide whether to use your stamina on offensive or defensive actions according to the situation in which you find yourself at the moment. When you are not careful and deplete your stamina on attacks, parry has your back. You just have to master it. But what would this all be without enemies to fight with? Our enemies work better in groups, not because they are weak, but because they complement each other. Each enemy unit has a specific purpose in the fight, and its actions are created to fulfill this purpose. All units altogether should create diverse situations where you always need to pay attention to different kinds of dangers. Red Servant is our main melee unit, harassing the player from close range and always focusing on him, keeping close distance. His actions are all hostile, with various magnitudes of power. Mage Demon, on the other hand, is a ranged unit, moving independently on player's location, but always focusing his attacks on the player. Mage can also teleport, making his persuasion more difficult. Mage is also a reactional unit, meaning that attacking him in certain situations is more dangerous than otherwise. Player must learn when this happens and avoid it. Slime Lady is a tanky character with weaker attacks. She is there to distract the focus of the player. She has many big area attacks, making the navigation across the room for the player harder. Slime Lady is also a reactional unit, where she shoots many projectiles out of her back when attacked inappropriately. Then, we have 2 more enemies soon to be added: Healer, Spirit of the Death, and Suicider Beetle. There, I would like to take a very short pause and talk directly to you. As you can see, we are still in the process of development. Currently, our game has 3 active and 2 more prepared enemies, but having double the amount would be fantastic. Same goes with equipable weapons, levels, traps, perks, and so much more. We would love to make our game great and fun to you as well to us. And you can support this endeavor. As you can imagine, the amount of content in our game is a question of time and money. For that reason, we have launched our Patreon. If you feel like our game is something you would like to see in the best possible state, please consider becoming our Patreon. But even if money is not the way you want or can support us, being active in our community is very helpful. Share this video, comment below and follow this channel. Share your ideas or join our Discord. The more people notices our game, the higher the chance we are going to be able to work on our game while sharing an exciting demo to you. So, back to the enemies and their combat purpose. Next, with the Suicider Beetle. Suicider Beetle must always be the first focus of the player, as its health is minimal, but when it reaches the player, it explodes and takes a lot of health with it. Spirit of the Death also should be one of the first interests of the player, because the longer he's alive, the longer all the units are alive as well, making the combat significantly harder. Most of the units also have some semi-hidden mechanics, which are rewarding for players who reveal them. For example, all attacks of Slime Lady are melee based with low to middle reach, but meanwhile she is in her reactional state, shooting many ranged projectiles with each incoming hit. She's absolutely harmless at close distance. This means attacking her from afar is preferred most of the time, as she cannot hurt you with her attacks. But when she is in her reactional state, it is exactly the opposite, giving you a chance to change the tactic. Situations like this rewards players for discovering and undergoing risky situations. So, as you can see, entering a battle where 3 red servants are present needs to be approached differently as opposed to a situation where there are 2 suiciders and 1 slime lady. All these interconnected mechanisms lead to the outcome where a group of enemies works more like an organic single unit, throwing many attacks at the player while also defending itself. This results in a gameplay which is very engaging even after hours of playing. It also allows for a natural learning curve, where you can slowly learn one enemy after another, reaching a moment where you can fight them all like a one big unit at the same time. Now, understanding player abilities and also enemy actions, you can imagine that every combat situation requires different approach, different solution. Entering a gunfight with a knife isn't always wise, as old Indy taught us. So learning to utilize each unique attack in our game is both important and fun. I would also love to tell you a little bit more about our different weapons, thoughts behind their designs and how they create various play styles suitable for different kinds of players or moods. There's a lot to be said about balancing the weapons while still maintaining a very unique feel to each one of them. Each of our weapons represents a different opportunity of combat style. But this video was already quite technical and I don't want it to be super long and tedious. So it's time to slowly wrap it up. But I started this whole topic with calling our combat both simple and yet complicated. So, what does that even mean? I think you can tell what I meant by saying that from a perspective of me, the designer. But what does it mean from your point of view, the view of the player? Well, what if you would tell me? I will be more than happy to share our demo with anyone who will reach out to us. And I will be more than happy to listen to your feedback, because you will never know how the gameplay truly feels without trying it out. Did we invent our combat system well? Is it hard to control? Does the simple yet complicated design allow for a very open and replayable combat? Or is it just too much? We are looking for a voluntary testers. So, become one of them. Have an impact on our game and its development. Or just see you in the next video. Until that time, enjoy the most important game we all are playing, called life. Bye!